Joining us now to discuss is marine scientist, environmental entrepreneur, and climate risk expert, Dr. Deborah Brosnan. Now, we just heard from a survivor of the Mount St. Helens eruption, but you also survived the volcanic eruption in Montserrat back in 1995. That one killed 19 people. Can you just tell us about what happened?
Yes, I was on Caribbean island of Montserrat studying the marine life to help design a marine reserve. And I was underwater monitoring the coral reefs when I heard this very strange sound. And shortly afterwards, these rivers of ash started to come down through the water on top of me. And the Montserrat volcano is like Mount St. Helens. It's an ash explosive volcano. So almost immediately, day turned to night, it became pitch black underwater. So I went up to the surface and effectively going back up into the eruption. And as soon as I hit the surface, everywhere was covered in ash. This ash was coming down on the ocean. And then I swam back to the boat through burning vegetation, burning leaves. And I found the boat more by instinct because I knew where I'd anchored it because it was so dark we couldn't see a thing. And so I got back on the boat, which was then covered in ash, and the engines one had choked and died. So about 4 hours later, I was able to make it back to back to land, back to the port. And being underwater is what saved me. But I made it back to a very, very different landscape. And I remember thinking that we had changed from a natural hazard, a scientific natural hazard, to a natural disaster that was going to affect people's lives for a very long time. The port was under 100, the main town was under 100 feet of ash. The airport 3 miles away was covered in ash. And there we were looking at a very, very stark situation.
Wow. Wow. And you returned to Montserrat after the eruption. Most of the city, obviously, as you just mentioned, was destroyed. But what was the rebuilding process like for the community?
I returned there because we had to, for me, it was really important that the community be able to recover. And one of the ways that they had to recover was to find a way on and off the island. So the local government, working with the British government, decided to set up a new port and had just done that a little bit beforehand. So we were working on this new port when the eruption happened. And I went there to work with the community to design this new port. And we had to do it in an area that was pristine. But because the community depended on fisheries so much, fisheries and agriculture, we realized that some of the reefs that were vital for fisheries would be destroyed by the port. So we literally relocated the reef around the headland to ensure that the habitat still persisted. So it was working with the community that was there. Montserrat lost about half its population during that period. Wow. So the lesson for me really was that we have to start using our science early enough to help communities who are facing these kind of issues, both volcanoes and even now more so with climate change.
Of course, and the science being able to try and get in and find as much as we can, the warning signs, to be as prepared as possible when tragedy like this happens. Dr. Deborah Brosnan, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for telling your story as well.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And for everyone else, Violent Earth with Liev Schreiber, a new episode airs tonight at 9 Eastern and Pacific, only on CNN. Still ahead for us.